This was eye-opening for me. These studies showed that children who are spanked may have mental health problems, including anxiety, depression, and even suicide. And that will be part of my story that I'll share later. It's not bad parents who spank, it's parents who don't have all the information. In my view, knowledge is power, especially because this job of parenting is so important. The more you know, the more well informed choices you can make. Yes, I was spanked as a kid, like a lot of us. As I shared in a previous video, and I will leave the link to that video below, I grew up in a violent alcoholic home, and both my parents were mentally ill. I was the eldest of 7 kids born in a space of 9 years. I was hit mostly by my mother. It was a very difficult place to live. To be honest, I never felt safe one day in my family home. And when she was upset and angry, she would hit us. She had no empathy, so she never felt guilt. And I will talk more about it later. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Wynne Harwood. I'm a mother and a grandmother. 30 plus years ago, I started as a community health nurse, visiting 50 to 75 homes a month, working with families and helping them with their children, giving them information, just like I do today. Then I became an international speaker and have worked with groups of parents. I'm so happy to be here to support you. You are raising our children who are our hope for tomorrow. And if you're not new here, welcome back. In the last 50 years, 1,500 studies have been done in North America and across the world on the effects of spanking. The latest study was done in 2017 at Harvard. After this study was published, one of the researchers, her name is Dr. Elizabeth Gershoff, and she's the mother of 2 herself, was interviewed, and she said, the most important conclusion is that spanking doesn't work. Parents do it because they think it works. They think it makes their children compliant and it teaches them right from wrong. But she said spanking doesn't do that. Another researcher, Dr. Murray Strauss, says that there's no way a parent can see the damage that was done because it doesn't show up until years later. The studies show that spanking increases a child's resentment and resistance. But that's not what we want as parents, right? We want them to cooperate. We want them to do what we ask them to do. We want them to stop doing what we don't want them to do. But instead, it builds up resentment and resistance. By the way, it depends on the dose, as we say in medicine. So the more you do it, the worse it is. The studies didn't show that spanking causes these things. What it showed is that children who are spanked are more at risk for these conditions. This was eye-opening for me. These studies showed that children who are spanked may have mental health problems, including anxiety, depression, and even suicide. And that will be part of my story that I'll share later. I often say that children don't always do what you tell them to do. Children do what you do. So one of the outcomes of spanking is that children become more aggressive, imitating the behavior of their parents. When I was visiting 50 to 75 homes a month, I often saw in families where spanking occurred, the older siblings often hit the younger siblings when they were frustrated. And out in the schoolyard, again, this is imitating the parents. Their aggression is directed toward those who have less power than them. A child who's younger or someone who doesn't have the social skills. It turns out like bullying, right? The victim is always somebody who has less power than the bully. And there's another thing that parents don't want. Another thing that I saw when I was visiting families was boys are spanked more than girls. And that's what these studies also found. And if there's no boy in the family, often the child who's labeled the black sheep is the one that gets spanked the most. Children lose empathy. They're not better behaved, and they're not more pro-social. As they get older, moving into adolescence, they are more at risk for addiction to smoking, to alcohol, and to drugs. Another effect is that the relationship with the parent deteriorates. And for the child, it is very stressful to be hit by their parent. This is the person that they're supposed to be attached to. Their survival depends on this person. This person is supposed to be their safe person. And now this person is hitting them when they're most vulnerable. And the stress can become chronic because it's estimated that about 50% of parents in North America spank their children. And usually the spanking starts around age 1. Parents have reported that they've hit their child when they're a year old or a year and a half old. And then it usually doesn't stop until the child is 10 or 11. So this stress becomes chronic stress, and that affects brain development. You couldn't choose a worse time to spank a child than in the toddler years, especially from 2 to age 5. That's when brain development is so rapid. And so spanking really affects the brain. I know spanking is stressful for parents too, because it starts off that we're frustrated and angry with our child. And then when we're hitting our child, we lose our empathy. They did another study with kids who had been spanked. They had them under imaging and an MRI machine, and they were showing them images of faces. When they showed these kids faces that were threatening, the prefrontal cortex of their brain was just lighting up. It wasn't the same for children who weren't spanked. So the effect on the brain is a really big deal. And from that particular study, when I tell you my story, you're going to hear how that was so enlightening to me. Because of this research, 62 countries have banned spanking. Children in North America are the only citizens who can be legally assaulted. I've done research on spanking for years. I have never wanted to spank my kids. So I knew quite a bit, but in this last study, this 2017 study, which I hadn't seen before, when I read some of these conclusions, I just felt validated because I'm like a poster child for what they found to be the effects of spanking. In my early 30s, I was depressed. Oh, I had suicidal ideation. I never tried to commit suicide because fortunately I got into therapy, but I certainly thought about it. As an adult, I treated my parents respectfully, but I didn't feel close to either of them. I didn't trust them. It was definitely a compromised relationship. I did come to understand that they did the best they could because I found out that they had experienced a lot of trauma as children themselves, like really bad stuff. And they did the best they could. However, as a therapist told me, and this was so helpful to me, he said, you have to hold them responsible for what they did. This is important because if you don't, you will hold yourself responsible because when parents don't take responsibility for what they do, kids blame themselves. Such wisdom he had. That one study about children in an MRI where they were showing threatening pictures and the MRI showed that they had nervous system damage. It showed up in their prefrontal lobe. Honestly, that gave me such insight and such relief in lots of ways because of the one thing that I have worked hard to recover from that I haven't been able to, is that I have anxiety, but I also have this response to, I'll give you an example. So I can't watch violent scenes on TV or in movies or in the news. And I'm a real movie buff. I love film festivals. I go through the program, and if there is a movie that has any violent scenes in it, I'm not choosing that. And when I get in a movie where there is a violent scene, I have to leave. And the same thing in our TV room. If I'm watching something and there's any suspicion or any sign that there's going to be violence, I have to leave because my response is so intense. It's just like panic. And I feel the threat bigger than it is. And I just have to leave because the feeling is so horrible, absolutely horrible. I feel like I'm going to die. That's the truth of it. My blood pressure goes up. My heart rate goes up, my breathing goes down, and if I don't leave right away, I kind of freeze. And my family, they know that I just leave. I leave and then I breathe, and if I do some exercise, it gives me a lot of relief. So walking around my house, I get relief. And then somebody always calls me back in my family to say, "Mom, it's over," or my husband will say that, "It's over, babe." I've been teased a lot by friends, a lot, when they say things like, "It's just a TV show," or "It's just a movie." But my response is over the top. It turns out that I do have a damaged nervous system because of what happened to me when I was a little kid. And that makes me sad, but it also gives me relief. And the other thing I know now is both my parents had damaged nervous systems. And that's why all these studies say that spanking is abuse. There was a huge study done, and the conclusions were called the ACEs. It was adverse childhood experiences. They all cause problems. They're all abusive and they're very harmful to children, just like spanking. They've said now that spanking is one of the adverse childhood experiences. And I'm going to share that out of 10, there's 10 ACEs. I have 9 of them. And they said that if you have more than 4, your adult life has been affected by these experiences. I'm not looking for sympathy, I'm just stating the facts because I have worked really hard to recover, and I'm sure I'm still recovering. That is why I'm so passionate about the work that I do, because I know how important childhood is. Childhood is the most important time in your life. So, helping parents and supporting parents like you, it just makes my childhood a rewarding experience. So I thank you so much for that. And in my next video, I am going to talk about what you can do instead, because there are things that you can do instead so that your child feels safe, so that you feel like you're effective and that what you're doing helps the child, that it doesn't turn into more frustration, more aggression, and wrecks your relationship with your child. I'm going to talk about that. I'm hoping to do that in my next video. So please subscribe, because if you subscribe, then I can reach more people. And that's my goal, is to reach more people. So I would really appreciate it if you subscribe. And I will link some videos at the end of this video, and I'll see you there.